The film is called The American Society of Magical Negroes. It's a response to the magical Negro trope, which is a longstanding trope in movie history, and it is a satire in response to that, and also a love story about trying to find someone who sees you in a world that might rather see you as a stereotype. Yeah. So it's the magical Negro. Spike Lee coined the term in the '90s, identifying this recurring character that he'd seen, really a stock character. And the way I define it is a black supporting character who doesn't have their own internal life. They only exist to support the white protagonist and their goals.
Also very knowledgeable.
What's that?
Like magical Negroes know everything.
Yeah, so and there's a bunch of like sort of characteristics of them, a lot of like folksy wisdom, floating in to offer plain spoken but subtly wise advice. They take a bunch of forms. Sometimes it's a black best friend, sometimes it's a old, sort of old janitor with a magical twinkle in his eye kind of vibe.
Oh, yeah.
So I started working on this film really to criticize the trope and to play around with it. But then when I began working on it, it became a much more personal exploration. And what I think the film is ultimately about is this very particular defense mechanism that I was taught as a black person about how to survive racism in America. And that defense mechanism is to be accommodating to white people who have power over me. The classic example of this is, my dad sitting me down and teaching me how to be friendly to the cops to keep myself safe. And that kind of lesson is, it's really a kind of assimilation lesson, right? It's like fit in, don't rock the boat. And that the pressure to do that has been, I think, quite destructive in my life. And this film is about my particular attempt to unlearn that.
You know what I thought about? When I was in 10th grade, a Detroit police officer came into our classroom and instructed the entire class how to behave during a police stop.
That's wild. Really? Yeah.
Absolutely. He said, now I'm going to walk you guys through this. And he said, you're stopped by a policeman.
Yeah.
He walks over to your car. What do you do? And we would all say, nothing.
Yeah.
We don't have to do anything. He said, you're absolutely right. But I'm going to give you some suggestions what you should do.
That's wild. Yeah.
And so I remember one kid, he said, if the policeman says roll down your window, would you roll it down? No, because I don't have to. And he said, absolutely right. Mm-hmm. But he's going to break the window. And he's going to be angry. So he walked us through it.
Yeah.
He has a gun. I'm going to bet none of you kids will have a gun.
Right.
So you have to think about how you behave.
Right.
I don't know what initiated this, but that was separate and apart from the talks we all went through in our families.
Yeah.
Well, it was like a police stop. And Kobe was the angry white policeman.
That's my directing style. Yeah.
Well, one of the questions I asked is, even though, I saw this name Kobe, I was like, I had to make sure who wrote and who's going to direct this is a black person doing this. Because if they'd have said a white person, I probably would have passed. Because I just get anxiety. I'm not going to be on this set for however long trying to explain to this dude what is right and what's wrong and why I can't say what he wants me to say. So.
Yeah.
So Kobe originally had me on at the Sundance Labs. He asked me to fly out and workshop it with him, and it was the first script that I read that accurately showcased my own racial experience, and really highlighted a lot of the ways that I've erected these survival tactics in order to cope with my environment, my homogenous white environment. So. I have two mics. I had such a blast and a catharsis shooting this film because I learned how to take up more space, how to be more unapologetic in my identity, and in my right to exist on this planet. And it's still a journey, I still have long-standing conditioning about politeness, which is code for like being put in your place a little bit.
Yeah.
But I've come a long way because of this film. So I thank you for that, Kobe. Do you want two
Can I
mics?
ask you a question?
I can't pull it off.
Okay.
I can't pull off two mics. Yeah.
Justice, have white people ever asked you about, well, what are you?
Yeah. When I was younger,
Yeah.
because I grew up in a I started out in a predominantly Mexican neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
and then so a lot of people thought I was Latino.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of people actually. A lot of people knew I was black, because even within other ethnic groups,
Yeah.
they yeah, like this is a very difficult conversation to talk about.
Yeah.
There is a racial hierarchy at play,
Yeah.
and black is often at on the lowest rung of that racial hierarchy, and so even in a Latino neighborhood, it was like, or the black kid.
But there's also like an urgency to categorize, which
Oh,
which
absolutely.
I find really
And to
troubling.
hold
Yeah,
on to
yeah,
what
yeah,
power you have,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
whatever
yeah,
power you might have.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
you guys do know that it was white
yeah,
Europeans that were obsessed with categorizing
yeah,
the blackness of Americans,
mm-hmm.
because they, in fact, are the ones where
Yeah.
You're mulatto,
Mm-hmm.
you're a quadroon, you're an octoroon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
they went in minute detail. What it was a caste system.
Right,
Wait a
Mm-hmm.
minute.
I love talking about race. I really do. I mean, I've had to equip myself with the language around race just to survive in the society. It's another tactic. But these are the conversations I'm having with my friends,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm so happy to be doing it publicly. All
yeah.
this to say,
Good.
it was such an interesting phenomenon to see white actors come into the room and perform what their version of quote unquote racist is. Like they really like white people will do mental gymnastics to separate themselves from any accountability, and like so much so
Yeah,
that um like like the Ku Klux Klan won't even call themselves racist. Like
yeah,
they're like, we just want like the groups to be separate, but it's not race. It's like, well, then
yeah,
who is? Like, if no one is, then who is? Yeah. So like the beauty of casting Drew Tarver,
mm-hmm.
was that he was just playing the honesty of the
Well, because he's
situation.
really a racist.
Well, that was it. He was a devout racist, and it came easy to him. But no, he just played the honesty of the situation, and
But
he was so likable and funny, and it was important that white people could identify with him in some aspect, even though he is one of the antagonists of the film. They had to be able to see themselves in him in order to make the change within themselves. And Kobe
yeah.
paints that character so beautifully throughout the film.
But
There's an actor. There's one actor. There's the character of
name, please.
the actor's name is Mia is her first name, and she plays Lacey is the character, is the drunk white girl in the film.
Yes.
And in looking at a lot of those auditions, obviously there's a bunch of really talented actors who did beautiful work, but there were so many actors who the choice they made was just to really just comment on the character, say this is and almost say through their performance, this is a racist character, this is a character
Well,
that has a
it's to
problem with.
separate.
Mhm.
I,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
contend that
yeah, yeah.
those actors who went so far over the top is fear of self-incrimination.
That's exactly right.
You know
That's
what?
exactly right.
This
Yep.
this is so not me
Yeah.
that I'm going to do a caricature because
Yeah.
I know nothing about this,
Yes.
because I'm not
Yes.
that way.
And it
And-
was for
and
the day. It was for some day players
It's
too.
yeah, it's these very they're small roles. Anyway, and
Yeah.
the actor we cast I love because she's just having a good night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She's not trying to get this black man in a bad situation.
Exactly.
She's drunk having a good time.
It's so funny that
uh,
when white people see themselves in a supporting role to black people, they have to put on a caricature. But when they're the protagonist of their
Yeah.
movie, they're just going through
Yeah.
the motions. And so
Yeah.
you had to constantly remind these supporting white characters that no, you are in your own movie. This guy is the supporting character to your movie.
and I think so much of this movie is about shame. It's about for black people the shame of doing some of these defense mechanisms, even if we were coerced into doing them. But for white people, I think the shame is being labeled a racist, which is a radioactive term. And one of the best things white people could do for all of us is take the temperature down on that accusation.
Mhm.
Where if white people can own their biases and have that kind of accusation and implication be more banal, not need to distance themselves from it to the same extent, that would do a lot of really good things for us.
I mean, I have
Go ahead.
Yeah.
biases too. I happen to
100%.
think I'm
Yeah.
an incredible person. Sue me. You know what I mean? I don't know. What I was born with.
I was gonna say my favorite form of white allyship amongst like my white friends is when like something will happen, something microaggressive will happen, and they'll be like, "Oh, that was racist. Like what I did just then was racist, and I'm sorry." And moving on.
And it's just that quick. It can be that easy. It can be that easy.
Like,
yeah.
Don't focus on it. Don't wear the guilt of it. That doesn't help anybody. Just be like, "Oh, that was racist. Name it. I did something racist, and I'm sorry." And moving on.
And I think with that, the comedy is how the shame is bearable. For everybody, for myself about the defense mechanisms, and I think for other audiences with the different shame that they might be experiencing about it.
You know what, I got a reaction, and this is, I'm telling you, I didn't expect this after the screening. A lot of people, strangers, came up to me one after another and said, "Why didn't my character have more lines?" And I didn't even know how to react to that. And I also had a song that was cut. Maybe I'm racist against this guy. I sang the theme song.
Sing the theme song now.
The American Society. That's what really.
It was one of
magical Negroes. It was really great. It was really great.
It's one of the last cuts we made. It was a really hard cut.
Yeah.
I thought it worked.
There you go. Yeah. So a couple of things. One, it's just part of it is just landing in the pocket of the genre, right? Where it's like you wants to evoke other wizard movies that shall not be named, but also part
that's
of what
such a funny thing you just said. And that's so layered.
Well, I like that because we've all heard it. Like, was that supposed to be Harry Potter? You have stone faced Harry what?
Who?
I've
Harry
never heard of.
That was such a quick wordplay. I can't.
He's never gonna repeat.
I know, but really good.
But the other thing about it is part of there's a visual thing that I was playing with in the contrast between the society and this tech world that we go into. And when I think of those like mahogany sort of like wood paneled places like Yale and Oxford, they're so self-serious. They're working really hard architecturally and from a design perspective to tell you they're important and they're serious and they demand to be taken seriously. And to me, part of and you contrast that with the tech spaces that are light and airy and breezy, and do they even have doors? Is a joke my production designer and I had about them. They're almost trying to seem like it's not, like no seriousness of purpose happens in those environments. And to me, there's a contrast in privilege there, right? Where Black people have to work so hard to be taken seriously and be given that credibility and respect, and then white people can sort of almost pretend that there's no work because they get that credibility for free.
Well, there's a known statistic. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, other billionaires increased their wealth during the pandemic by almost 30%. Yet the hourly rate has gone up by nothing. They seem totally fine with that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not in that category. I gotta make the big bucks.